morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, IoT in your office. We will talk about building a connected infrastructure for smart, productive workspaces. My name is, as indicated, Remco Landsbergen, and I will be your moderator. I work as a strategic alliance manager here at Signify, the organization previously known as Philips Lighting. And I'm excited to be your host today for a session with two of our key partners. First, we have Cisco, and later on as well, we have as a speaker someone of Panduit. I will introduce the speakers shortly. Both companies are supporting our journey in the digital building transformation and the creation of smart work environments. Today's webinar is composed around three areas. We have three different speakers. We will start with my colleague, Derek Wright. Derek is the global head of office systems and services at Signify, and he will share how a secure connected lighting infrastructure enables your business to increase operational efficiency, optimize space and workflow, and improve employee performance and well-being. The next speaker is Peter Dijkstra, working for Cisco Systems. Peter is a leading voice in the country digitization initiative in the Netherlands and focused around smart buildings and cities. Peter will take a deep dive into how Cisco has reinvented the network for buildings purpose to leverage the power of data, secure it, and create meaningful experiences, creating, in other words, a digital building. The third speaker and last speaker is Giampiero De Martino. He is a manager at Panduit's networking infrastructure business unit, and he will talk about how we can utilize structured cabling and its benefits of converged systems to deliver an agile and efficient digital building. So without any further ado, I would like to kick things off by welcoming Derek. So Derek, up to you.
Thank you, Remco, and I'm also very excited. So as Remco mentioned, my name is Derek Wright. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Interact Office today. So Interact is a connected brand of Signify, and I'm really going to be talking about using power over Ethernet lighting in office spaces. This, however, is not going to be a technical discussion. Really, a lot of the focus is going to be on the value that we can deliver through lighting or deliver beyond illumination. So typically in an office space, and this kind of works on a global level, what is the expenditure that we see in an office space? Typically around 1% of the office spend is attributed to energy for an office space. Around 9% is for the rent within that space. And 10 times more than that, around 90%, is going on the payroll, so the employees within that space. For our company, historically, we've been very much focused on energy saving and trying to get to 70–80% of energy saving. And more our focus is moving towards the bigger elements of spend within an office space, that 9% and 90%, so the bulk of the spend. And by saving just 1 or 2% of those elements, we're able to save a lot more for the tenant of that office space. A few more statistics that are very much linked with those 9% and 90% are actually and also in slight conflict with each other. First of all, typical offices globally are often underused and only have an occupancy or utilization rate of around 50%. On the flip side of that, and taking a number here from a loaded cost per desk in Paris, over 12,000 euros per year as a typical loaded cost per desk. So that number, of course, is increasing in large cities as well, and utilization is low. So we're spending a lot of money on often unused desks. Then in relation to the 90%, the payroll or the employees part, or what we often refer to as productivity. Numbers from Steelcase actually here, 70% of people take up to 15 minutes per day to find available space to meet. That equates to over 2% of people's time just looking for spaces to meet. And that's something, again, that is in a complete flip side of how space is being used. So not only are offices typically only utilized around 50%, but often meeting rooms are being booked and not being used. So people are in the office space looking for spaces to meet, cannot find them because rooms are either booked or are just, they cannot find where there is available space. And this is where with Interact Office, we'll have solutions for these. What are some of the other trends that we're seeing within the office space? One of those that's becoming increasingly important, flexible capacity. So increasingly, we're seeing organizations needing to increase in size at rapid speed and also decrease. So the need for numbers of workplaces or project teams to come in is meaning more flexible capacity is needed. At the same time, workplace efficiency is a hot topic. So that 9% of office spend is typically a big KPI for a corporate real estate manager, and they want to see how they can decrease the amount of space that they're utilizing. Activity-based working. More and more we're seeing an open plan office and workplace innovation being deployed, whereby whatever that task is, you will be expected to go to a certain place. Perhaps that means a different light level being attributed. And so there is a need not only to find those spaces, but also to adapt those spaces to the task. And the fourth one here that increasingly in the last year or two, we're starting to see as major agenda points for corporates is comfort and well-being. It's sometimes crazy to think that actually in many organizations, how historically this hasn't been a KPI for someone within the organization or someone below CEO level. So comfort and well-being is starting to be recognized within organizations, of course, as a really important factor to how we can maintain a healthy workforce, how we can keep those staff, and how we can attract them in the first place. Further to those four, there are three that are maybe more of a hygiene factor within the space. Sustainability, I mentioned before about energy saving and the amount of energy saving that can be done with a typical LED lighting system. Of course, the energy numbers are low, but energy we still see as a really important factor. It's something where typically organizations, large organizations will have a sustainability manager, and there are very strict targets in terms of getting organizations to a better place within a sustainability measure. Increasingly, we'll also see heavier demands on energy usage through things like electric cars. And so the question will be then, how can we balance the energy network such that that extra energy can be provided for things like electric cars? Identity. So, of course, when buying into something, into a connected lighting system, the office still needs to look good. What we've seen in talking to many customers now, that identity is taking a bigger form than just a visual identity, almost an identity 2.0, whereby it's not so much about how the office looks, but how the employees within the office are actually feeling. And that starts to be reflected in some of the solutions that we offer as well. And the seventh one here, short-term ROI. Of course, increasingly we're seeing tenancies of in-office spaces reducing, and there is strong pressure to make sure that we are still meeting ROI targets for our customers. And those need to be return on investments, not just measured by energy, but also through what it can do for the space, and also, more importantly, for the productivity of employees as well. So now talking a little bit more about Interact Office and what it can deliver to businesses. Typically, we try to organize aligned with what you saw before of that 1%, 9%, and 90%, and how we can impact those. So the first of those being optimizing operations, the second referring to enhancing of performance of the space, and the third one really in increasing employee engagement and well-being. We mustn't, however, forget how quality of light is important, especially in that third pillar of enhancing well-being. So figures on the screen now in terms of how light and good quality light can help to improve mental function, call processing, and productivity increase. Interact Office as a system is something where we use Power over Ethernet to provide a range of benefits for all of those pillars. The first row here are the slightly more hygiene factors that you would expect from a regular lighting system, and the second row of space management, indoor navigation, bioadaptive lighting, and environmental monitoring are where we look to differentiate with a completely connected Power over Ethernet lighting system. So I'm just going to dig into each of these a little bit with a slide on each of them. First of all, lighting management. So this increasingly is something where the need is to actually have something that can be operated remotely, not just below the lights themselves. So because every light point actually has an IPv6 address, commissioning and remote recommissioning becomes very simple. Lighting asset management. So not only in terms of setting those up, but again, understanding if there has been any fault or if there is a lack of connectivity anywhere in the system can actually trigger an alert in a dashboard or to email to understand if there are any problems. And of course, to make sure that we can automatically deploy firmware and software updates and upgrades to make sure that you're on the latest release, the latest secure release as well. Energy optimization. So here we can do a number of things in terms of, again, regular lighting system behaviors like daylight harvesting, scheduling, occupancy detection, typically on a per luminaire basis, without foregoing comfort. So we'll do things like corridor hold for lighting behaviors. And here we're able to also, because of things like personal control, we're actually able to, by default, reduce the standard light levels, for example, to 300 lux at desk level, and give the option for employees to take those light levels up when they're perhaps doing work that requires a higher light level, such as reading. 300 lux is typically great for using a laptop that many office workers will do. That kind of reduction that actually we deployed in the edge can already provide 42% energy savings just by having that applied as a lighting behavior. Scene management. So again, this is where we can offer a range of different user interfaces. One being a web user interface, really more for facility management to use. We provide an app for light control below the lights, so the ability to localize through something called visible light communication to understand where you are within the building and then easily take control of that space, be that for the light level or for the temperature level. And of course, we need to make sure that we can have the option of light switches as well. Not everyone wants to start their meeting and take out an app just to control the lights above their head. Space management. So this is where we're actually using occupancy detection in every single light point to help understand on a real-time and historical basis how the space is being used. Not only that, but we go one step further and we use, with a partner called Point Grab, people counting sensors as well to not just understand the occupancy of the space, but how many people are in that space, and even desk level availability. So from the ceiling to understand what desks are being used historically. Indoor navigation. So this is where we utilize that same technology I mentioned before, visible light communication, and we triangulate that in with the front camera of a mobile phone device to get an accuracy of sub 30 centimeters in terms of where you are within the building. So once localized, of course, you can start to then do things like find that available meeting room, focus room, or perhaps an employee if they've also checked into the application themselves. So where I talked before about that 70% of people taking up to 15 minutes per day, we will dramatically reduce that by making them easy to check in, to understand where they have been localized within the building and where those available meeting rooms or focus rooms are to meet with a colleague. Bioadaptive lighting. So this is actually where we'll use a circadian rhythm to, and we provide a curve typically customized to the customer's needs to support employees within their office. So here we're changing not just the lux level throughout the day, but also the color temperature to support the circadian rhythm of employees. And here we need to work very closely to understand the customer's requirements, their typical working hours, and often further adjustments will be needed. And that's again something that we can perform remotely after it's initially been installed. And final one, environmental monitoring. So really again focusing on the need of well-being and health within the office. So right now we have added a temperature and humidity sensor that can easily plug in to the luminaires in the ceiling to understand a bit better how that space is being utilized and the quality of air in that space. Later this year, we will add more to that. And again, via plug-in sensors, be able to bring in sound detection, and also from a wall-based sensor to be able to bring in CO2, VOC, and PM levels within the space, all via a power of Ethernet connection. So what that boils down to in terms of a typical day in the life, firstly of an office worker, they can walk into the office and use that mobile app and use wayfinding to find their most appropriate location to work in. They can use that same mobile app to find and reserve a nearest meeting room and use the wayfinding to navigate to it. During that meeting, the lights can flash as a visual cue to say that the meeting is coming to an end. We see a lot of meetings typically overrunning and delaying the people that are about to use that meeting room afterwards. So having that visual cue can be priceless. Via a mobile app, locate and find colleagues for lunch, and then later on in the day, adjust the color temperature and light levels to suit the task and mood, because not only do we provide that curve, we also provide the ability to override as well. And then when leaving the office, of course, the lights dim background level when the space is not being used. We need to make sure, despite all of the smart technology, that without that technology, this is operating as a normal lighting system. And then from a facility management perspective, we're starting to see the need for not just understanding occupancy, but to start to predict that occupancy as well. So through our space management application, we'll start to do that, to give predictive analytics, to see how a floor is expected to be used or how a building is expected to be used, and then potentially give the option to close off a floor completely. The real-time fault notification that I talked about before, and using wayfinding to help to locate that in the best way. High humidity levels could be, for example, detected in a certain area and a ticket raised to help investigate that as soon as possible and as proactively as possible. Due to lack of occupancy, it can be that we can quickly and easily switch off not just the lighting, but other amenities such as HVAC. Later on in the afternoon, using that space management application, you can review the historical occupancy data and propose longer-term changes to the building configuration and the space required. And at the end of the day, understanding that occupancy information to be able to provide to a cleaning company, for example, how the space has been used. So we've done this now in a number of buildings, and just to highlight a few, first of all, the Edge now been installed for 4 years. And one of the major aspects that they've done is they've used the occupancy information from those sensors in every single light point to understand how the building is being used. And what they've been able to do in that time period of 4 years is actually see that a lot of their space was underutilized. So where first they had 1,700 people allocated to the space, as Deloitte as the main tenant in the Edge, after a year and a half, they were able to adjust that, close down a building in Amsterdam, and actually have 2,700 people registered to the space. So actually then providing a lowered annual cost of space per employee by over 1,800 euros per year. Then in Bangalore, in Intel's building, so SRR3, so this is one of our largest buildings, 60,000 meters squared. We've provided as a combination of Power over Ethernet and DALI. Here, the big focus has been on talent recruitment, retention, and overall employee experience. And Intel have been a big user of our APIs. So not just our applications, but our APIs to help build integrations to make their building more smart and work in a completely automated way. And then the final one here, a smaller one in Dubai, and actually education. So this is one of the first universities in the world to have a smart lighting system. And again, with a partner organization, using an SDK to do that wayfinding, that initial localization step that I mentioned, people are able to see where they are on a map and navigate to available space. What does that all look like in terms of a system architecture? Well, we can use Power over Ethernet switches in one of two ways. We can use them in the ceiling. So as the picture shows here, a Cisco digital building switch, or we can use a rack-based Cisco switch, for example, the 3850, and then have a home run system using Panduit cabling, of course, to bring power and data to and from those connected light points, data in terms of that occupancy information. Each one of those is having that visible light communication that communicates with the personal control app, and then back via Wi-Fi to a server to help then control those light points that are above the head. So every light point has an IPv6 address, and I'm happy to go into more detail in some of the questions. So that's it from me. I am going to hand over to Peter Dijkstra from Cisco. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Peter Dijkstra, indeed from Cisco, working in the digitization domain, specifically in cities and buildings. And today, after Dirk made clear what the value is of let's say connected offices, I want to make clear the role of Cisco in this place, and how Cisco is looking to all those businesses who are transforming to the workplace of the future. And when we talk about transformation, we talk about creating something new, completely new in a way that, and we do it completely different. So not taking all technologies and bring those technologies and convert those technologies, but really making new technologies work. When you look from a Cisco perspective, we look to transforming processes and business models. I think that's an important part when we talk about digitization. If we talk also about empowering workforce efficiency and innovation, and personalizing citizen or customer or employee experience. And that relates a little bit on what Dirk was telling about the 1990 effects, what we see about leveraging really the amount of square meters in a building in combination with bringing people, let's say, in a more productive way. If we look to the role of Cisco within all those digitization areas, especially also in buildings, we talk about that we want to be the secure, intelligent platform for digital business. We really want to increase the pace of innovation. If we look to being the digital business platform or intelligent platform for that digital business, we see a couple of places where we play an important role. So first, we really power a multi-cloud world, what we call the multi-cloud world. We see more and more several clouds asking for the same kind of data, so you have to make sure that you can provide the data really out of the building to those cloud environments. We had to reinvent the network, and the reason why we had to reinvent the network is really because of the fact that a big amount of sensors are coming up to the network and coming up to the internet. And all those amounts of sensors and all those amounts of data need to be managed in a different way, because we can't manage it in the way we should have it done in the past. So we need to automate things. That's what we called the digital network architecture, or intent-based networking. And then the third one is really about unlock the power of data. Dirk made clear that if you have the data available, you really can make the difference also in the building space by using the data and making people more productive or getting better insights of how your building is working. Security, we believe that security is really foundational to make, let's say, every building work in a digital way. If we don't have the right security in place, and from a cybersecurity perspective, we will fail in that digitization story. So we put in security everywhere, what we called. The network sees everything, and we are quite confident that we can place security in the network in the right way and make sure that that security works for every device which is connected. And then Dirk also showed the meaningful experiences, really creating meaningful experiences. It's nice to capture all the data, it's nice to connect to everything, but at the end of the day, it's really about what kind of meaningful experiences you can deliver in your building. If we talk about some market trends and customer needs, we see from a workplace experience an average workstation cost up approximately 1.5% globally. So that's quite a lot. But we also see the workplace density, which is really increasing. Dirk made the example of the edge, where you see that the workplace density is increasing quite well, but you see that overall. But also attracting the real talent, the next talent. So I think we are now in a stage that we see several kind of people working in the building, some elder people, some newer generations of people, and everybody wants to be the most productive people in that building. So you have to really bring, let's say, separated workspaces and different workspaces for those people, especially for the Generation Z talent. From a technology perspective, we see more devices, more sensors, more data. We see virtual reality is coming up, geolocation, and even blockchain is moving in the space of digital building. And from a customer need perspective, we see integrated facility management. We see really energy and operating savings, sustainability, and people wants to be future-proof. In the past, future-proof meant, okay, we are placing the building for 10, 15 years, installation in those buildings, but how are we able to really keep up the pace with all the technology innovations which are going on and make sure that the building can adapt to those technology innovations. So, oh, sorry, the wrong way. So one of the important lessons we have learned in the last couple of years when we worked on the digital building side is really that it is an opportunity where a couple of departments from customers needs to come together. So it's not only operations, so facility management who is interested in this topic, or probably HR because of changing the way we work and getting people on board and really up to speed in the building. But also from an IT perspective, we see more and more focus on this topic, and especially also on real estate. And the only way to have really success is really bring those people together in the same room and talk about the same topics. Still till today, we see that probably a new build or a deep renovation is really a real estate focus in combination with the operation focus. IT is really late in the process, or the other way around. IT is focusing on some ways about making people more productive by implementing new tools in the building, but it's not aligned with things like people from the facility management side or real estate side. So we really need to make sure that we really work together in this case. So this gives you a little bit of an overview if we look to a cross-architectural approach and really from a digital building ambition. If we talk to customers, we see that most of the customers are really focusing on what we call level 0 or level 1, or are at least in their mind probably also in level 3 or level 4, but then don't step back and see, okay, how should that foundation look like? What do we need to really implement in our offices or our buildings to make sure that we really can make up the next step to level 3 and level 4. So level 1 of level 0 is really on the automation like we do it today. Level 1 is really focusing on, okay, are we able to converge everything back to IP, to one backbone within the building, make sure that we connect everything on that one. Level 2 is a little bit more, let's say, what we call validated architectures and solutions, like we talked over today, in combination with the connected lighting, in combination with Panduit, and make it as a whole package. And level 3 is really about using the data which is coming out of all those systems, probably separated silos, really bring it together and make it what we call smart predictive. And level 4 is really self-thinking, let's say building, but that's probably for now 2 or 3 steps too far, but really rethink then your design back to level 1, level 2 to make sure that you are ready for the level 3 and level 4 in the near future if you ask for those functionalities. So from a Cisco perspective, we look, let's say, to that digital building perspective from 2 ways. So first from a workspace design strategy perspective, and then also from a technology innovation perspective. So when we looked from a workplace design perspective, and if you know Cisco a little bit better, we are a networking company, but also a collaboration company. We look to trends like activity-based working. And Dirk was already referring a little bit to activity-based working as a solution in your office. But you need to make sure that you align that activity-based working with the right tools in the right type of rooms. So if we look to that perspective, we really want to align workspaces with work activities, as we call it. So bringing people, technology and space together. So I've give here a little bit of an example about concentrating places, collaboration places, co-creation places, and learning places. So really bridging the way how the physical world in combination with the virtual world is coming together in those working spaces by using and adding technology to those rooms to make sure that people really can interact together. Also, intelligent workplace technology is an important one. So as Dirk already mentioned, and also from other investigations, we see a lot of people spending a lot of time to make, let's say, the technology work in the rooms they want to use, sometimes 10 minutes a day. So if you look at to your overall workforce, it's quite a lot, bringing, let's say, video in the room or combinations of that. So we need to make sure that kind of technology is getting more and more easy to use, and that's how we work together. But we're also using technology in those video endpoints, for example, which we can use in our digital building as well. So I give you here an example where we use AI just for the fact that we want to give you the right video experience. So we are using AI to bring people just from a video perspective in the right way in the screen to make sure that you have, let's say, the best experience, and also from an audio perspective. But you can imagine, and you see it on the top right side, that it is quite easy to use that same technology to give you a real overview and a real-time overview about how many people are in that room. In this case, 6 people are counted by the camera of your video endpoint. And you can imagine if you talk about unlock the data in this case, if you can reach the data, it's really valuable to know that there are 6 people in that room, and you can bring that back to your, let's say, smart building platform to make sure that you use the data properly for facility management perspective, or probably also from a focus on your real estate. But also AI let's say speech is an important one we will see in the near future. So workplaces where you can really talk to the technology in a broader perspective is one of the things we believe that will move on. So we will use that in our technology as well, but you will see it in a broader perspective. It's really coming, let's say, from homes. You see it with the Googles and the Amazons, and people are really expecting that also at the office space. Not only because it's easy to use, but also it's fun to have, let's say, those technologies in the buildings, and gives especially the Generation Z the way how they want to interact with the building. From a technology innovation perspective, I already mentioned that we really focus on the connected, the unconnected, what we call it, with security in top of mind on that one. And we talked about reinventing the network, the fourth utility. We're talking about the fourth utility in this case, and we are talking quite long on that one. So already for 7, 8, 9 years, we talked about that data will be the fourth utility in the building. But there are some steps made in the last 7, 8 years to really make that happen. So it's about easy configuration. It's about working together between the IT environment and the operational technology environment. So not everybody has IT knowledge and need to implement, let's say, that fourth utility in an easy way. So that's why we talked about zero-touch deployment, and make sure that everybody can install those technologies in the right way. But also universal power over Ethernet. It was already a reference to power over Ethernet is a DC-powered thing, which is quite normal to use in the IT environment, but now we see it moving also to the operational technology environment. Not only lighting is powered by PoE, but also the HVAC installation or screens in the rooms, etc., etc. So that's a quite easy way to really distribute it, to have a microgrid DC in your office. Cisco Enterprise Security. We talked about a little bit of the validated architectures and solutions, and what we mean with validated architectures and solutions is really important, especially for construction firms which are really focusing on bringing that building alive in a certain time period. They want to make sure that new technologies are working properly as expected, and those validated architectures and validated solutions, we can guarantee the right way of working. Unlock the power of data. It's an important one, really from the edge to the cloud, as we call it, and the creating meaningful experiences. If we look at the moment to intelligent buildings and how those buildings are evolving, let's say from a connected perspective, we see a lot of systems are already on the IP backbone of a building. There are also systems at this moment really transitioning to IP. So, for example, the low voltage control, lighting control, as we discussed today, but also the window shades. For example, Somfy is coming up with some PoE-powered window shades, but also emergency signage, emergency lighting. Those are all transitioning to IP. And there are also a lot of systems which are really for monitoring only, as we call it. Sometimes those systems are wireless, or probably also on IP or on a separate system. But it's quite a lot which is already, let's say, connected in the building, and the expectation is also from an investigation of Navigant, for example, that it will quadruple in the coming 5 years of types of sensors and connections in buildings. So when we talk about bringing it all together in the Cisco digital building, the blue line is a little bit what we call, let's say, the ceiling. And within the ceiling, we see a lot of, let's say, sensors, IP systems, HVAC system, building automation, sensoring, lighting are really coming together in a network infrastructure, as we call it. As Dirk explained, there are two types and two flavors in that network infrastructure we can use. It could be a distributed infrastructure or it could be a centralized infrastructure. It's really depending on who's in the lead. And sometimes we see also a kind of hybrid infrastructure where centralized and decentralized is a little bit of mixed. But it's really about who's in the lead from let's say the building perspective, what is chosen. So from an operational technology perspective, we see people really choose for a distributed system. Let's say from an IT perspective, most of the time there's a focus on a centralized system just because of the maintenance and everything around it. In the time we are working, in this case, with Signify and working on this kind of topics, we are also changed, let's say, our products a little bit to make sure that those products are really focused on digital building. So specific functions are implemented in our products to make sure that they are really fit for digital building as well. So it's not a traditional IT switch, which we are using, but an IT switch which is upgraded with functions specifically for the operational technology domain to make sure that everything is working properly. So it's like things like co-op, which is an IoT protocol, or the PoE side, different functions for security. Those are all packed in that network infrastructure. On top of that network infrastructure, we put what we call data control services to make sure that the data is delivered in the right cloud, to make to fuel the right application with the right amount of data, and make sure that you have the meaningful experience where we talked about. So from here, I want to hand over to Gian Piero to make sure that he can explain a little bit more on the physical infrastructure and show you the whole picture. So then we have Dirk's story from the outcomes, our story, let's say, a little bit from the intelligence in the network, and then from Gian to make sure that he make clear how it's all coming together in that building.
Thank you, Peter. I can get the control of the system right now. If you can confirm that I can see my screen. Peter, if you can, okay, good. Thank you. So let's continue this journey that we are facing on today. Thanks to Peter, thanks to Derek. We're already going in detail about important aspects like reinventing the workplaces and then having, let's say, collaboration places. These are important aspects that we have to consider, especially observing what is happening in terms of economies, in terms of businesses that are evolving, in terms of organization that are requiring to be more and more efficient. So there are multiple aspects that are suggesting us to pay attention to smart technologies, to create environments that are contributing to, again, increased productivity, efficiency, but also being workplaces where we can stimulate creativity from people that are more engaged in the organization. So these are important considerations from our side, and we have to be prepared to the cascading effect, because in reality today we are talking about, let's say, digital buildings that are part of the evident digital transformation that we are observing and we are absorbing, let's say, when everybody of us are invited to accept the change, to evolve, and sometimes also to accept some disruptive technologies. And everything, again, is cascading to these new workplaces based and located into digital buildings. But digital buildings require digital networks, and especially their upgrade. And so this is the reason, because, again, as the basement, the infrastructure to connect everything and to get all the advantages and benefit from this innovation require, let's say, robust and converged assets. And the good news is that there are no limit in terms of company size to get that kind of advantages, because we are talking about innovators, not, let's say, reactive user of this kind of technologies. So how we can approach, how we can get more and more benefit from what the new technologies are offering us. In this representation, we can simplify the concept about what we are using actually in terms of network and what is the real potential. So together with Cisco and Signify, this is our mission, together with all of you, to reverse the approach, to reverse this iceberg where there is an invisible part that is still not used, let's say. And this is something that we want to also reflect in terms of network infrastructure. And our mission is to elevate the infrastructure. Peter already said, in the ceiling, we are having a lot of devices that are more and more implemented there. And so just getting the example and the experience that we had over the last years, where the physical infrastructure and still is mainly realized underfloor, let's elevate this infrastructure, moving it to the ceiling to, again, get more and more benefit. Because let's say that converged building networks means, again, smart, productive workplaces. On the past, we were using the cabling, the physical infrastructure, just to transport data and voice. Then, step by step, what we realized together with our expert was to move more and more application in other areas. So security, for instance, cameras or wireless access point or sensors. And now today we are talking about lighting. So many of these devices are actually installed into the ceiling. And so this is the reason, because again, the infrastructure can be simply replicated in more extended applications. So from Derek, we understood more and more about intelligent lighting systems, let's say, that are composed by 5 important aspects. First, these systems are based on LED technology to surely contribute to energy saving, but also to improve the life cycle. I think that we are around 4, 5, 6 times versus the traditional system in terms of life cycle. The intelligent lights are also IP connected, so it means that they are manageable, and they are powered by PoE, by power over Ethernet. So low voltage, that means increases safety and increases security. And because they are connected to the Ethernet, they are absolutely flexible and integrated. And this is the reason, because we said before with Derek that it is not a simple lighting system. It is really a point of network intelligence. And again, emphasizing what Peter said before, we said IT, real estate and operations, it is a great opportunity to work together, because all of them are in the same room and they can talk about the same topic. This is the reason, because lighting is absolutely a new IT area of interest, and surely the new IT responsibility that we have to pay attention. So just spending a minute on this specific graphical representation, we are having here, let's say, part of the visible applications. So it is very easy when we are, for instance, entering us in some meeting room, some specific working places, to observe around of us how many applications are possible to be used. So sensor or wireless or security. Again, audio, video now moved over Ethernet or voice and data. And then today we are talking about lighting. What is the problem? What is the important part that sometimes we are missing? It is the infrastructure that is frequently invisible, but is absolutely crucial to enable all the application to get all the advantages that are part of this specific discussion. And especially for those applications that are requiring, again, power over Ethernet. Considering also the last standard, we consider, for instance, the universal power over Ethernet protocol from Cisco and other that are stressing a lot of the physical infrastructure. So this is the reason, because it is mandatory to have a robust cabling infrastructure and support everything back. So let's have also the possibility to analyze some core architecture based also on what we observed before. So let's talk about, for instance, one architecture that is the home run cabling. So very simple connection from the point A to the point B. as a sort of basic star topology. So we are having the power over Ethernet source that is based into the telecommunication room or into the main cabinet. And then from here, there is the direct connection with the end use side. So here we are having some examples, some representation about lighting or cameras or IP phone and so on. And this is something that can be reached or can arrive directly to the, let's say, installation in the ceiling or underfloor. Then the second consideration based on that experience is that maybe or surely it is better to move to, let's say, more structured cabling system. So in that case, we are talking about zone cabling because before we saw something that is less flexible, that is complex to be managed. Even in terms of maintenances, we can have some issues. So let's use the benefit from zone cabling advantages that are, as also Peter said before, or centralized or distributed. So versus the previous representation, here we are having an infrastructure that is also integrating sort of a segmentation point. You see here the zone area. So in this case, what we have to say that using these consolidation points that are installed closer to the end user, we are absolutely eliminating first the home run cabling. We are also increasing the flexibility, and then we are also decreasing complexity via and using specific accessories that are, let's say, possible to be installed over the wall or in the ceiling or underfloor. Using this concept, using this centralized, using this zone cabling system, now we are having the possibility to use the centralized version. That means continue to keep the PoE source into the telecommunication room, but installing this passive zone enclosure that are reached by cable bundles, and from this passive zone enclosure, we are directly reaching the end use. Again, this is something that we can simply replicate in the ceiling or in the underfloor. Then let's have a look to the distributed zone cabling. And here you can quickly see a couple of important changes. First, the PoE source is moving to the consolidation point. And then another important aspect is that we are eliminating the cable bundles, because it is necessary just one copper or fiber cable between the telecommunication room and reaching the consolidation point instead of the bundle that we saw before. And then just to again provide quickly a comparison between the two possible architecture, so centralized versus distributing and abandoning, let's say, the home run cabling. Here it is a simple representation about these two solutions. So you see the bundle cable in the first case in centralized versus the single cable that is connected with zone cabling, but in that case we are moving the PoE source into the consolidation point. And on top also a quick representation, graphical representation about the real architecture when we are moving from the telecommunication room to the zone and then the distribution directly to the luminaires. So in conclusion, there are many aspects that we have to consider when we are choosing physical infrastructure, but let's focus on 4 important points. So first, think about the thermal dissipation, especially when we are installing cable bundles. So this is the reason, because considering what are the recommendations coming from the standard, Panduit together with Cisco and Signify demonstrated in a specific lab using our specific technologies. In this case, we are talking about a special cable called matrix cable, Cat6A cable, that we were able to demonstrate that the cable bundle should be realized even with the higher quantity of cables. So just remaining under the 15 degrees that are required versus the recommendation. So this is one important aspect, even if the normal suggestion is to avoid to install more than 24 cables per bundle. The second important aspect is that because we are talking about equipment that are connected to the network and powered by PoE, we are also having a problem when we are disconnecting this equipment and creating electrical arcs. So these electrical arcs can create problems in terms of communication stability, and to avoid these intermittent performances and risk of downtime, especially when we are having some movement and change, we realize a specific system that is a sort of suppressor of that kind of electrical arcs, and this is another contribution in terms of engineering to absorb also these potential gaps. The third consideration is to get benefit from potential direct connection with luminaires or with wide access point or cameras and so on that are also PoE powered. So there is the chance using the field termination plug to reduce a lot of cost in terms of accessories, in terms of labor cost, just connecting directly this specific accessory to the cable that is connected to the consolidation point, or in some cases directly from the telecommunication room. So this is another important aspect that is also recently added into the last standard. And finally, the last consideration, as we saw before in terms of architecture, to support them, it is important also to pay attention to some specific component of this architecture. That means pathway, or again, zone enclosure system, or the right cable management system into the telecommunication room. So in conclusion, all of these technologies are logically visible, and is also for us a chance to invite you to get in touch with us, and in case you are having interest on it, to see this specific solution, not only maybe the connecting light, but more and more implemented technologies. And the good news is that from, let's say, April, also in a couple of these customer briefing centers we are having all over Europe, especially in London and Milan, there is also the chance to see and to touch by hands these integrated connected lighting together with Cisco and Signify. So that's it from my side. Space for a couple of minutes, I think, for possible questions. I don't know if Remco want to get the control, or Philips in that case.
Thank you, Giampiero.
Welcome.
So let me take it from here. Indeed, if there's some time left, a couple of minutes before we conclude, are there any questions from the participants? Please make them known via the Q&A tab, as you can find in the right bottom. It remains a bit quiet. There we have one. Ronald Timerson. Okay. No question. Okay. And I would like to thank you all for your participation in today's webinar. I think we have been able to showcase that the three parties here are fundamentally working on creating a connected infrastructure for smart and productive workspaces. Building on the invitation of Giampiero, we appreciate if you reach out afterwards as well in case there are still questions, or in case there's particular interest to have a further dialogue. You can find us back via the linkages as well as the people on the call. Thank you very much, and by that I would like to conclude the call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.